2025. This panel brings together experts from the South African Reserve Bank, the Financial Services Conduct Authority, or FSCA, and the Intergovernmental Fintech Working Group to discuss the South African regulatory landscape and where the regulatory space surrounding fintech is headed in the future to enable fintech innovation and drive global competitiveness and also accelerate financial inclusion. And to moderate this panel is the lovely Lavina Ramkissoon, who's co-founder and chairwoman of the Fintech Association of South Africa. A little bit about Lavina. Lavina is a strategist and trailblazer standing for the unification of the African technological space. She's a conscious tech force with expertise in technology, psychology, economics with integration into AI, blockchain, and ethics at heart. This friendly neighborhood tech-curious creator serves in roles such as chairperson, director, and founder across multiple industries, sectors, and technologies, aiming to unlock the potential of the African AI arena. Humanizing technology and actively serving as a growth enabler for tech talent, Lavina is a force to be reckoned with, as you will soon find out. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause, please, for Lavina Ramkissoon.
With that, I think we're probably ready to kick off. In terms of the South African Reserve Bank, we've obviously seen quite a lot of activity, equally so from the FSCA and the IFWG. And, you know, just as an initial easy question for you guys, we're going to kick off and, you know, Lyle, I'll start with you in terms of the role of the South African Reserve Bank within the South African ecosystem. And that's just to purely give everyone context that's joining from international sort of form, both physically as well as virtually. So what is your particular take? I know you touched a little bit on it on your keynote, but if there's anything that you'd like to add and delve into, please feel free.
Thanks so much, Lavina. And I'm glad that there are no questions from the industry, because I don't know what's going to happen with exchange control and crypto. I'm sure that's the biggest one that everyone wants to ask. So the SARB, as many of you know, is the central bank. It's got a mandate around, a constitutional mandate around, you know, preserving the currency and price stability, and then it's got the financial stability mandate as well. Within the SARB, then, there are also regulatory functions. So there's the Prudential Authority that looks at safety and soundness. It also looks at, there's a payments department that looks at the efficiency and effectiveness of the payment system. So these mandates all get impacted by fintech, right? Because fintech then starts disrupting the institutions that the SARB is supervising, and it starts then raising questions around the adequacy of the regulatory framework that the SARB is regulating in terms of and supervising in terms of through the regulators that sit within the SARB. And so from that perspective then, it's crucial for the SARB to be aware of fintech developments and the impact that fintech can potentially have on the financial system and the players within the financial system.
Awesome, thanks so much for that. Awelani, a bit of an intro from yourself, and then maybe just a little bit of a dive into the FSCA's mandate.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Awelani Raurani. I'm actually head of FinTech at the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. As a FSCA, we are a creator of what is called the Financial Sector Regulatory Act of 2017. As Lyle have narrated, they've got a prudential authority within the SARB. So within the FSCA, we are mostly focusing on the conduct issues. So our mandate actually entails the protection of a consumer, where we ensure that the financial services providers are treating customers in a fair manner in the financial space. We also offer consumer education, whereby we support issues such as financial literacy among consumers. We also, what I can say, support the financial stability of a financial system, and we also promote and encourage what I can say, the safety, efficiency, and effectiveness of our financial system. In doing all this work, we sort of, we're doing it with the vision of making sure that we've got a safe, efficient, resilient financial system that enables and promote economic growth in the country. That's what I can share in a nutshell.
I'm just going to piggyback off your words in terms of it being very safe and secure. This kind of leads us to consumer protection and how important that becomes around financial services. What is your sort of take on that in terms of the challenges that the FSCA is addressing in particular around these challenges for consumer protection?
Yes, there are actually a lot of challenges that we are actually seeing, especially with the advent of digital financial services. For example, we've seen the skyrocket growth in scam and fraudulent activities emanating from crypto-related. We are also seeing, with the emergence of third parties who are able to make use of consumer data, could be data with a bank or wherever it is, to come up with some innovative products. We are also seeing the risks that are associated with the misusing of customer data. So, as a FSCA, we are aware of that, and there are measures that we are already putting into place to address that. For example, you might have seen we've just declared crypto as a financial product, so that we can deal with this kind of risk. We are currently working on a position paper on open finance, whereby we want to find a way to make sure that there are regulations that deals with the risks that are emanating from a lot of these activities which third-party providers are actually conducting, where you find that consumers end up being badly exposed.
Now we're going to get into some of the difficult questions. Lyle, from your sort of opinion, you, as well as the South African Reserve Bank, touched on, the CBDCs and the importance of that. What is, in your opinion, the long-term view when we have to talk about CBDCs, and especially that within the South African ecosystem and that of the African ecosystem?
So when I think about CBDCs, I think about it in these three ways, which are related, but we sort of treat them separately. The one is a retail CBDC. And I think the question there is, what's the value that a retail CBDC brings into the ecosystem? Given where we are as with the level of sophistication of the South African payment system, and will there be demand for this retail CBDC? Those are tough questions to answer at this point, given where we are and the work that we've done, having done a feasibility study, but not having engaged industry on retail CBDC. Then there's the wholesale CBDC piece, which is what we've explored in Project Corker 2. And I think that does hold promise. But again, it's something that we would need to see, how does the ecosystem need to change to adapt when we introduce something like a wholesale CBDC? I don't think that these things will come to market in a big bang way. I think we have to move slowly and iteratively with the industry. And then there's the other piece, which is the cross-border piece. And I think there again that there are discussions that are taking place within the SADC region, within the CMA region, around how can we collaborate and coordinate our efforts around CBDCs. And if we do start seeing CBDCs being issued on the African continent, how can we have better interoperability between those CBDCs? And we've seen it, Ghana's launched a pilot CBDC project. Central Bank of Nigeria has issued their CBDC. And so I do think that there is then opportunity for us to further discuss and think about ways that these CBDCs can address some of the pain points that we are seeing with cross-border payments. Having said that, we also know that there are other payment instruments that are looking to solve for those problems as well. And so I don't think that we should think about CBDC as it's either CBDC or it's this. I think it's about creating a payment ecosystem with different payment instruments and seeing how those can complement each other and how they can be interoperable. And
point well taken. We've obviously seen, as you mentioned, Alwani, around the headlines that have come about in terms of, the FSCA, where cryptocurrencies are now officially a digital asset or seen as one. With that equally, within a couple of days, we saw a lot of, the ecosystem being very responsive to that as well. So, in the ideal state, from the FSCA, what is the expectation or the actual value add that you would like to see in terms of this becoming a digital asset?
Yeah. So from our side, I think what is actually important from that historic declaration or milestone is the fact that the consumer now is in the position whereby it's protected. That's the first thing. Now they've got a recourse if something goes wrong. There are legal instruments or recourse that are there in place to assist them so that they are able to be treated fairly in the financial system. And secondly, we also into financial inclusion. It's one of our mandate. We believe this will also enable the inclusion of some members of society who are currently excluded as far as access of some of the financial services and products are concerned. So we believe that this will also drive that. And to the regulator, I think also what it means to us is that we are now in a position whereby we are able to separate the wheat from the chaff, let me put it that way. Those who are doing legitimate business and those who are rogue players. And we'll be in a better position to separate the two. And those who are doing wrong things, definitely they will face the might of the regulator. And those who are doing the good things, and then that's good. And then to the fintech players, I think, or to the fintechs, what it means is it's an opportunity for them to innovate, come up with new products and services tailor-made to meet the needs of South Africans. As you may be aware, though South African financial inclusion is considered to be higher, but as you go deeper, you'll find that a lot of people still don't have access to financial services and products that can help them during rainy days. So we believe this will add a great value in that context.
So you guys heard it here. Fintechs are welcomed by regulators. And so hopefully we're going to see a lot more of that. Last tough question, Lyle. In terms of the IFWG, it's been around for a little while. Can you possibly, shed some light in terms of the challenges that you guys may have come across in terms of what has worked and what hasn't worked in particular?
So I think one of the biggest challenges that we face as the IFWG is that we are working with a sector that wants to move very quickly in the context of regulations that move very slowly. And so I think there's a healthy tension between the fintech sector and the IFWG. And that's not unique to South Africa, right? I think the pace with which regulatory change happens is slow everywhere in the world, and it needs to be because it is a massive undertaking to make a law. I don't think it's something that we should underestimate the power that you wield as a regulator when you make laws in a country. It does need to be consultative. You do need to think about the impact that it will have, not only on that ecosystem, but for the broader financial sector as well. So it does need to be a very iterative process that we engage on. And I think that is a cause for frustration for the fintechs because it's like, you see the value, you see the need in the business, it just needs to go to market, and the regulator is stopping you. So I think it is to balance that tension that exists between regulators that need to be cautious, given the power that they wield, and fintechs that want to move with speed, because that's the nature of sort of, what technology enables for them. And so having those discussions as an IFWG and being quite open and honest with the industry around, the time it takes, the loops that we have to go through as regulators to get things done. And oftentimes the complexity that we have to think about, not just one business model, but really how is this going to play out for an industry that you end up regulating. So I think that's a tension. I think it's a healthy tension. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. And I think it's something that if we keep being open and honest about, there's also learnings on both sides to appreciate those perspectives. Thanks.
Well said. This is the last question. And we've all seen, from a regulatory standpoint, both the South African Reserve Bank as well as the FSCA and IFWG kind of really come through really strongly. And they are saying to us that take us seriously and we're here and we're accessible. With that in mind, we've also seen the likes of Parliament, we've seen the likes of regulators, and we've seen the likes of the city really come to pass in terms of supporting these kind of initiatives. And with that, and this goes to both of you, what is your sort of vision for 2025/2030 in terms of a regulatory standpoint? And that is both from a local perspective, so looking within SA context, as well as an African context.
Okay, maybe if I can start. I would say from FSCA point of view, the fact that I'm sitting here and I'm from the fintech department, it means a lot, because what we have done within the FSCA, we've established a fintech department whereby what we normally do, we continuously scope the development in our financial environment so that we are able to come up with the latest information to inform those people within the organization who draft policies, who draft regulations, so that when they draft them, they are drafting them as a policy that are informed by our present realities in the financial system. So going forward, you're going to see a lot of it, and it's already started, policies and regulations that are flexible enough to accommodate the dynamism that is actually currently happening in our financial system. I think gone are the days whereby, we will just do things in silos. We've realized the importance of talking to you and hearing what you are doing and taking that into consideration. Certainly, as Lyle have articulated, we are a member of IFWG. Within the IFWG, you've got a guidance unit and a sandbox where we are able to have a closer engagements and interactions with the players in the financial space. And then from the information that we are able to gather, it helps us a lot in formulating our regulation and policies. So this is the trend that is happening in South Africa. And when we also look globally, we are also seeing that it's actually the same. There are sandboxes that are happening, that are being opened all over, whereby regulators are getting closer to fintech players in the ecosystem, get more information that enable them to draft regulation and policies that are flexible enough to take into considerations the developments that are happening into their space. So I think that's how the future look like. Expect a very, I wouldn't say friendly, but a more warm and accommodating environment.
So collaborative. Awesome, Lyle.
I agree with Awalani. So I think what we need to do is put in place the enabling frameworks to allow the innovation to take place, to bring competition to the market. And I think that is going to be happening, right? So in the payment space, I think we're going to see some policy changes coming that's going to allow for innovation to take place in the payment space, new players to come into the market, and then creating an appropriate framework for those players, given the risk that they are taking on. I think we're also looking at other initiatives like open finance, as Awalani mentioned. I think that's another key enabler around broadening this ecosystem and bringing new players into the ecosystem to drive down costs and reduce inefficiencies and so forth in the sector. I think we're going to see some new payment instruments being used. We already have stable coins. The question is, how do you regulate those things? So I think those are some regulatory interventions that we'll see around stable coins. I think the crypto framework is going to continue to develop. What we see now is really phase one of crypto regulation, and that's aligned to what we put out in our position paper last year. So it's this idea of there's AML CFT risk, there's customer risk, there's exchange control impact, And then the next step is probably around prudential treatment of crypto assets and, banks' exposures to crypto assets. And then the financial market piece as well around crypto assets and sort of derivatives and all of those things. So I think there's further work that's going to come in that space as well. And so given how slow things move, that probably takes us to 2025.
Awesome. So we have 2 more minutes. And with that, I guess a quick question. And that would be one piece of advice or one word that you would give to the fintech ecosystem.
What I can say from my side is, as regulators, we've become aware that for us to understand what's happening currently in our environment, we have to reach out to the fintechs and understand. So as a result of that, we have established that sort of a collaborative way of working. So fintechs should feel free to reach out to us at any time. They shouldn't be intimidated that we are dealing with the regulators. No, we are very warm, we are very open. We believe that by working together, we can make difference in that space, in this space.
Yeah, I think I support that. I think the two things that fintechs maybe struggle with is, one, access to the regulators, and two, access to the rulemaking process. And I think both of those things, through something like the FSWG and the channels that we've created there, through something like the Regulatory Guidance Unit, it really is intended to help to demystify this regulatory ecosystem. And so it's not there to, tell you what is your business model valid or something like that. It's there to guide you in terms of making sense of this complex financial sector ecosystem that we have. And even with something like the sandboxes, it's there to help us get a better understanding of the fintech business model, the innovation that's potentially coming to the market, so that we can have clarity as well in terms of thinking differently about the frameworks that we have. And so I think it is to utilize the channels that are there and to leverage off them, because they've been put there for a reason, right? And so to just encourage the fintech community to really use those and engage with those. Thanks.
Brilliant. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much to the FSCA, the IFWG, and the South African Reserve Bank in all your efforts that you continuously sort of put forward to us. And with that, I'd like to say thank you so much, everybody. And this has been the Regulatory Panel.